No DQ Galaxy, we are live with No DQ&A video, the official Q&A video series of NoDQ.com. Shout out to everybody watching this, whether it's live or on demand. I very much appreciate your viewership and support. I have a lot of email questions sent in, plenty to discuss. Feel free to super chat a question if you're watching live. The super chats will take priority, and of course, they are very much appreciated. Now, let's get right into the email questions. First up, we have longtime No DQ contributor, TJS. TJS said, in my opinion, one of the only downsides to Paul Levesque and his era of WWE is all of the ads. Sponsors are all over the ring and barricade during premium live events. And for those who don't have Peacock Premium Plus, there are ads between matches. Does this bother you at all, or am I being dramatic? Well, TJS, I would be one to talk if I complain about too many ads, because that is something people have said about NoDQ.com over the years. Too many ads. It doesn't really bother me that much as long as they're not intrusive to the point where it affects my enjoyment of the actual matches. I haven't really noticed the ads too much on the ring mat. You do have the LED ads, but it's not like they're flashing all the time. They're static. It doesn't bother me that much. Of all the potential issues with the Paul Levesque era of WWE, I would not list the ads as one of them. I think my biggest issue with the Paul Levesque era of WWE is the entrance music, by far. That bothers me way more than the advertisements. As far as the ads between the matches, it's a bathroom break. Go use the bathroom. Go get something to eat. That's what those ad breaks are for. And if you don't have Peacock Premium Plus, well, you have to pay for the ads. And as far as I'm concerned, Peacock Premium Plus is worth paying for. But then some people out there might have a budget. You have to deal with the ads or find another way to watch. Thank you for that, TJS. I appreciate it. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat, first one of the night. Thank you, Psycho Jet Black, longtime viewer and super chatter. Always appreciate it. Psycho Jet Black says, seriously, why is Montez Ford still in a tag team? That is a great question. I think that maybe WWE feels that the Street Profits are better together than apart. There's always the risk when you have a tag team that is over, like the Street Profits, when you break them up, you risk them not having the same level of success. We have seen instances where one guy goes on to do great things like Shawn Michaels, and then his partner, Marty Jannetty, doesn't do too well. Miz and Morrison. Miz did well. Morrison did okay, not as bad as Jannetty. But then again, a lot of Jannetty's issues were his own doing. He got so many chances in WWE. Maybe WWE just feels like they're better off together than apart, and timing is everything. When you have a crowded singles roster and your tag division is on the weaker side, maybe the timing is just not right for these guys to split off and do their own thing. It's not like WWE is short on singles talent. What they are short on is a strong tag team division. Thank you for that question, Psycho Jet Black. Building Nexus sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. I appreciate it. Building Nexus says, shouldn't the Judgment Day story be about Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest atoning for their sins while in the Judgment Day? I have definitely seen various opinions on the Judgment Day storyline. Some feel that Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest are not really the baby faces in this story because they set the whole thing up and they were doing all of these terrible things, and now they're just paying for the bad things they did. I still feel sympathetic towards them, and in wrestling, the crowd often dictates who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. Look at Steve Austin. You could say Steve Austin got what he deserved. He paid for his sins when Bret Hart kicked his ass, but the fans just gravitated towards Steve Austin, much like they gravitated towards Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest. He started getting more and more of a positive response from the fans. The fans turned them. And in the storyline, you can argue, yeah, they got what they had coming, but Finn Balor could have just said, you're out of the group. I'm not in it anymore. Instead, he decided to stab his friend in the back, the one guy who trusted him. And we can all identify with our trust being broken. At some point in your life, somebody, whether it was justified or not, betrayed your trust. And it really hurts. And people can sympathize with that in both cases with Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest. Thank you for that super chat. I appreciate it. A2 sent in a €6 super chat. I think it's euros. I'm always confused by the symbols, and every time I have somebody pointing out what the correct symbols are, but I think it's euros. Aaron, I feel this is the most fun WWE has been since 1997. Do you agree? And what do you feel were the main turning points in WWE's recent rise? That is a great question. I agree with you. I will not go as far to say it's better than the peak of the Attitude Era. I also grew up on the Attitude Era and 1997 WWE. I have the nostalgia for it. I really do think that WWE had lightning in a bottle with Steve Austin and The Rock. Those two just caught on. You had to be in that era to really, truly appreciate how special it was and how it was a whole new level of innovation compared to what the WWF had been before that. But right now, it is as well polished as it's ever been. The Attitude Era was rough around the edges. As hot as Steve Austin and The Rock were, there were definitely some low points of the Attitude Era. And I feel like right now, if anything else, WWE is the most consistent it's ever been. The quality of the wrestling, the quality of the storylines, the positive attitudes behind the scenes. You don't hear too much about people in WWE not getting along. It seems like a well-oiled machine, and just the overall presentation, the production values, everything seems to be clicking right now in a way that it really hasn't throughout the entire history of the company. If you look at every peak period of WWE, there was maybe something that was lacking. Attitude Era, the beginning especially, you didn't have the best wrestling. It picked up when you got Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, and the rest of the Radicals, Eddie Guerrero. Golden Era, you had some of the most memorable superhero-like characters of all time, but the wrestling wasn't too good. And then during the Ruthless Aggression Era, you had a better in-ring product, but creatively, it wasn't as good as it used to be. And what was the main turning point? Obviously, Vince McMahon being out of the picture is the biggest one. WWE was starting to pick up some steam, though, before Vince left. When Cody Rhodes jumped, that was definitely a significant moment. Of course, the Roman Reigns heel turn, the Bloodline, those were what started the ball rolling. And then Vince being gone, Triple H taking over TKO, the acquisition, the merger, all that made WWE into the product it is today. And again, it's probably the most consistent it's ever been in the history of the company. So thank you for that super chat. That was a great question. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I appreciate it. Psycho Jet Black says, should Judgment Day have new members? If so, who? I like the group they have right now. You don't want half of your Monday Night Raw roster as part of Judgment Day. I think you need to just stop at 5, maybe 6 members. At this point, you got enough people in the group. You got Finn Balor, Dominic, Liv, JD McDonough, and Carlito. That's 5. I say keep it at that. Maybe consider a 6th if there's somebody who fits in, has the chemistry with the group, and there's a good opportunity. Then maybe you could add one more person. But I would go against the idea for the most part, unless you really have a dream scenario where somebody just fits right in like a glove to Judgment Day. But as of now, I think they're good with just 5 members in the group. All right, let's get to another email. This one comes from Ian, who is a regular contributor to NoDQ&A video. Ian says, hey, Aaron, happy Thursday. I'll be traveling south this week, so I will not make the live stream. Ian's not here. Anywho, if John Cena were to challenge Gunther for the World Heavyweight title, should Gunther be the first man to tap out John Cena since Kurt Angle? This was the headline of NoDQ&A video, the thumbnail. It's a big topic. Everyone is discussing possibilities for John Cena's final run, perhaps winning a 17th World Championship. Will he go against Cody Rhodes to try to win it? It seems like Cody Rhodes is going to be busy with other opponents heading into WrestleMania. But what about Gunther? Who does Gunther face at WrestleMania? Could it be Brock Lesnar? If not Brock Lesnar, could it be John Cena? John Cena going for a 17th world title. Doesn't need to be against Cody Rhodes. It could be against Gunther. Do I think John Cena should get the 17th title? I would be fine with it. I'm fine either way. But I think it would be a nice feel-good story. I do think John Cena has to have one last big moment. And some might say, well, he should win the IC title. But I think he has to at least go for the world title. Should he submit Gunther? I don't think that's necessary. I think I would prefer if John Cena was to beat Gunther, and that might be a controversial booking decision. But if it did happen, I would be fine if it was by pin. I don't think it needs to be by submission. Honestly, you could save that for somebody else you're building up down the line, have them submit Gunther, and that makes them a made man. John Cena doesn't need to beat Gunther, but at some point, I would think it would be a very nice, touching end for John Cena's career. If anybody's earned it, we talk about deserving it, but if anybody's earned to have that record of 17 world titles, I think it's John Cena. I just don't think it should be by tap out to Gunther. So I would not go that far. Thank you for the question. Shout out to Owen Williams, who emailed this question. Thank you, Owen. Hope you and your family are well. Thank you for that. Hope yours are as well. Mine are doing great. Owen says, with Triple H meeting with the London mayor about bringing WrestleMania to Wembley Stadium, do you think this will be the start of a yearly show at Wembley? If so, where does this leave AEW doing shows at Wembley? I don't think it'll be yearly, unless London is willing to pay some ridiculous amount of money to have WrestleMania. I just don't see that happening. I think it's going to happen once, and it will be a test. If WWE gets the viewership on Peacock that they want, which I'm thinking they will, WWE is expanding their international premium live event schedule. So clearly they're happy with the numbers. Fans, I think for the most part, I know I am, they're happy with watching the shows at noon, 1 p.m., whatever the time is. If London is a huge success, and I think it will be, I don't think they'll do yearly shows, but I think it will open the door for more possibilities outside of the United States for WrestleMania. Whether that means they do a WrestleMania in Paris one day or one in Japan, maybe Saudi Arabia. I think that will make it more likely. London will be the big test for WrestleMania. I do think it's going to happen. I don't think that meeting with the mayor, the photos, was an accident. I think it's all part of a plan. John Cena coming out at Money in the Bank, hyping it up. I think it's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's just when it's going to happen. Sometime within the next 5 years. And I don't think AEW has anything to worry about in that regard. I mean, I think AEW's got to concern themselves with being able to draw 40,000 plus fans for 2025. Will they even run Wembley Stadium in 2025 and risk not drawing a big crowd? Speaking of AEW, the Anime Gen 2.0 sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, has AEW reached their glass ceiling? I hope not. Right now, there's no sign that there's going to be an immediate turnaround. What could get AEW's viewership and numbers back up? Possible signings. Shane McMahon might move the numbers slightly. I don't think there's any single wrestler or personality that could get those numbers back up to like 1 million. If AEW is going to have a shot at going back to where they were and possibly reaching a higher level of success, they're going to need a creative overhaul, at least with the television. The pay-per-views are great. I wouldn't change anything with the pay-per-views other than having them air earlier and maybe run a little bit shorter. But the pay-per-views are fantastic. The TV, it's uneven. Some weeks, Dynamite's on a roll. They put Will Ospreay and MJF out there on free television. They have blood and guts. It's compelling TV. Other weeks, like this week, not so much. They need more consistency with the TV. I think maybe it would be a good idea for Tony Khan to bring in some new creative people and just try some different things with AEW. But then, of course, you risk alienating your existing fans, and maybe Tony Khan doesn't want to do that. He wants to stick with what he's been doing, and that's having a big budget version of PWG or Ring of Honor. Building Nexus sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Building Nexus says, wouldn't Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest trying to win back Rey's trust being a really compelling storyline? Absolutely. And we haven't seen Rey. He was not on TV this week. We haven't seen him since the betrayals, but I definitely think that they should play that up on TV where Rhea Ripley and Damian need some reinforcements, maybe the LWO, but Rey Mysterio is not going to be so forgiving. It makes logical sense. Like, Rey should not just be trusting them right away after all the hell that they put him through. You look at Sami Zayn and Jey Uso. Jey Uso coming over to Raw, and not everybody's on board with Jey Uso naturally because of everything that he did while he was in the Bloodline. Same thing applies here. Rey is not going to be trusting, and it's very realistic. So yes, I do think it would be a very compelling storyline, and we'll see what they do, what they come up with. Thank you again for the super chat. Much appreciated. Now let's get back to the emails. TJS sent in this one. He said, which Kurt Angle run was better in your opinion? WWE 1998 to 2006 or TNA 2006 to 2016? Kurt Angle had a great run in TNA. he was one of the top stars of that company, and he really gave them some credibility when they needed it after coming on Spike TV. But nothing to me beats classic Kurt Angle when he was at his physical peak. In TNA, he was still going hard, but it was taking a toll on his body. In WWE, he was younger, and I think his best matches were mostly in WWE. He did have some good ones in TNA with Samoa Joe and AJ Styles. But to me, his peak, Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, going up against Brock Lesnar, Iron Man match, Chris Benoit, Royal Rumble, having his matches with The Rock and Triple H. That was peak Kurt Angle. Have to go with the WWE run. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Psycho's question: how would you bring Jimmy and Jey Uso back together? Well, this actually ties in with another question I got via email. I think you have to get Jey back over on SmackDown. Not sure if you do a trade or what you do, but Jey's got to be on SmackDown. You have to do something with Jimmy, bring him back first, but then him and Roman Reigns, as tough of a unit as they are, they're still outnumbered against the new Bloodline. And at some point, Jimmy's going to need to reach out. But again, is Jey going to be so quick to trust Jimmy? So you got that whole story, and you can let that play out for a month or so. It's August now. War Games is November. Pretty soon, you bring back Jimmy next couple of weeks. And then once Jimmy and Roman Reigns are struggling, that's when maybe you do a trade, or you somehow have Jimmy get Jey over to SmackDown, and that's when you pick things up with the OG Bloodline getting back together. So on that topic, Jordan Smith from Oklahoma sent in this email question, said, I know that Raw is a 3-hour show, but when you look at both rosters, Raw seems to be so loaded. What two or three people, if sent to SmackDown, could help make the SmackDown roster better? Jey Uso and Sami Zayn. I would consider doing a trade. Raw is very strong right now. I also feel Raw has been a better written show than SmackDown, but in order to elevate the Bloodline storyline, I think you have to have the Usos reunite. So to make SmackDown stronger, to answer your question, Jey Uso and Sami Zayn back on SmackDown, reunited with Roman Reigns. That really boosts up SmackDown, and then you can trade a couple people over to Raw and maybe give them a new environment. Maybe you switch Jey and Sami with A-Town Down Under. Give them a fresh start on Monday Night Raw. Dylan asked in the chat room about this. I would say A-Town Down Under. I feel like they're kind of lost in the shuffle. You could do Pretty Deadly, but would that even be close to a fair trade? I mean, I don't even know if Theory and Waller would be considered close to a fair trade, but at least when you look at Theory, he beat John Cena. So I would say he's at least a little bit of a step up compared to Pretty Deadly. So thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. Ed Williams sent in an email question. Shout out to Ed. Says, what do we think is the reason Wardlow has been off TV? Tony Khan just doesn't have a spot for the guy right now. I don't know if there's been some drama behind the scenes with AEW. You never know. There's been a lot of stories. AEW has, unfortunately, developed a track record for not utilizing their big men very well. Wardlow being the best example. Powerhouse Hobbs, they pushed him. They had to beat Chris Jericho, and it went nowhere. Miro, they pushed him. They stopped pushing him. They push him. They stopped pushing him. And same thing with Wardlow. Guys like Luchasaurus, he ends up losing to Jungle Boy. He's a monster, but AEW just doesn't know how to book those guys. Either that, or Tony Khan just doesn't want to because he wants to book the guys that can have the 5-star matches. Those are the guys he wants to push. But as it turns out, the 5-star wrestlers are the smaller guys. But they're the ones that Tony Khan feels can give him the best reviews. People are going to rave on social media, on the newsletters, on Cage Match. Wardlow's just not that guy. But if AEW wanted to break that glass ceiling, people like Wardlow were the ones that he should be pushing. That guy had the organic momentum, and he looks the part. He looks like a superstar, and they just gave up on him. And now that he's off TV, like, why invest in the guy? He's cold now. There's really no purpose for them to push him on TV because his momentum's gone. And they got all these other guys. They have a bloated roster too. It's just a bad spot for Wardlow right now. And he's probably better off going somewhere else when his contract expires. And if I had to make a bet, I'd say he's probably out when his deal is up. Ian sent in this email question. Thank you, Ian. If you were to pick a stipulation for CM Punk and Drew McIntyre for their second match at Bash in Berlin, what would it be? I don't even know if they're going to have a match at Bash in Berlin. Keep in mind, these B pay-per-views are usually like 5 or 6 matches now. WWE is keeping these cards short. Will there even be a spot for them on the card, or will WWE hold off until Bad Blood and make that the main event? We'll have to see what they do. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that they're doing a 3-match series, with the third match being Bad Blood. Regardless, whether it's 2 or 3 matches, Bad Blood, Hell in a Cell should be the blow-off. Now, if you do a second match, what should that be? I would say do a no DQ match. Hell in a Cell is obviously no DQ, but it's the cage. You have the extra violence, or even maybe a false count anywhere type of match where they can brawl in the crowd. You know, stuff where they wouldn't do it in a Hell in a Cell match. Do that for the second match so it's not repetitive. That's why I would argue like a false count anywhere match, because they can brawl in the crowd, the concessions area, and in the Hell in a Cell match they'll be in the cell. So it'll be a different vibe. And you don't want to outshine Hell in a Cell either, but you do want to have something that is chaotic. That's why I think I would go with a Falls Count Anywhere match, or even a street fight, as Jeremy points out in the chat room. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat, says, what gets Jey Uso and Sami Zayn to reunite with the OG Bloodline? It's got to be Jey first. It's blood. Despite everything they've been through, Jey Uso is related to Jimmy. They're brothers. They're real brothers. And he's close to Roman Reigns. Despite everything that happened, Roman Reigns put Jey Uso on the map. So Jey is going to go with the idea that blood is thicker than water. Now, Sami Zayn is going to have a much more difficult decision because he was at odds with these guys. Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn have a history. So it will take a lot for Sami Zayn to jump on board, and that's something they could play up on TV where Sami maybe turns it down initially, but then he has a change of heart. He sees that Roman Reigns is a changed man, and once Jey makes the jump, it kind of reminds me of people say the Bloodline right now is similar to the NWO Wolfpack versus NWO Hollywood. And if you remember, Lex Luger jumped to the Wolfpack, and at that point they were able to convince Sting to jump to the Wolfpack. If Luger was going to do it, Sting would do it. They're best friends. He trusts Luger. In a way, that did make sense. I think they were just trying to pop a rating too, but it at least made sense in that regard. So if Jay makes the jump, Sami Zayn trusts Jey Uso, and I think in the end he'll realize that Roman is a changed man, and he'll join up with the Bloodline, and it'll be the nice happy ending to the whole Bloodline storyline until maybe we find out that The Rock is the one that's been pulling all the strings. Calvin Bowman sent in this email. Thank you, Calvin. Calvin says, was it the plan for Vader to win the WWF Championship from Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 1996? I don't know if that was ever the plan or not. I think the idea was to have Shawn Michaels as a long-term champion. Back then, champions would tend to have longer reigns, and losing at SummerSlam would have been, 4 to 5 months since WrestleMania, after all that build for Shawn Michaels, the boyhood dream and everything. I don't think that they were ever going to go with Vader. There were people that were convinced at the time that Vader was going to win. He was red hot as a heel, and he did have a dominant run as WCW champion, but they moved on. After Vader, there was no rematch. Shawn went on to Mankind, and then he ultimately lost the title to Sid. Sid was really hot. When Sid came back, he got hot, and I think they made the decision to go with Sid at Survivor Series and then have Shawn chase the title at the Alamo Dome for for the Royal Rumble. Thank you for that. And Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. Says, your favorite Mr. Perfect matches and moments. Mr. Perfect's best match, in my opinion, SummerSlam 1991 with Bret Hart for the Intercontinental title. That was fantastic. And then their rematch at King of the Ring, which is not talked about as much, but still really good. I definitely recommend checking that one out. And favorite moments, I think the babyface turn on Primetime Wrestling before the 1992 Survivor Series, when he dumped the water on Bobby Heenan, called him the wet weasel. That was great. That was my favorite Mr. Perfect moment. And Rap is Crap in WCW, although that's Kurt Hennig, not Mr. Perfect. You specifically mentioned Mr. Perfect, so I'm sticking to Mr. Perfect at this point. Let's see here. We got TJS with another email. He says, thumbs up or thumbs down for social media and the effect it's had on wrestling this decade. On one hand, it generates revenue for lots of people, but on the other, it ruins surprises and nullifies the see experience. Imagine if it leaked that Steve Austin was returning at Backlash in 2000. Then again, imagine the reports we would have seen after the Montreal Screwjob. TJS has exposed that he's a young man with this question, because it was known that Steve Austin was returning at Backlash. It was already out there, and they even did an angle before Backlash that he was coming. There was a lot of stuff that was leaked. Mankind winning the title from The Rock at the beginning of 1999. WWE published that on their own website, so people knew about it. It was well known. Some look back and they're like, oh man, Tony Schiavone gave away the match on Nitro. WWE gave it away on their website days beforehand. Social media, I would say, is negative, not for the spoilers aspect of it. Spoilers are everywhere, and they were around in the 90s, not as easily accessible as they are now, but they were around. The downside to social media is that it gives a voice to everybody. Now, that can be a positive. People have the right to express themselves, and as far as communication goes, it's very convenient now to be able to communicate with people that you might never meet in person. It's opened so many doors. But the downside to that, with social media now, People can make an anonymous account. They can have an avatar as their profile pic, and they can just talk a lot of shit. They can say negative things. They can rile people up. When there's no consequences, they'll say whatever they want, and they can be as offensive as they want and get away with it. That's the downside to social media now, that it makes it too easy for people to just be able to say any offensive thing they want with no consequences. However, these people did exist back then too. I mean, it's definitely nothing new, but it's just more expansive than it was before. It's more expansive in a positive and negative way, social media and people communicating on the internet. You don't have to go on Twitter, though. That's the other thing. If you're not wanting to deal with the negativity, don't go on Twitter. Don't go on Facebook. I mean, you do have that choice also. Shout out to Carl, who sent in I think this is a pound. I'm not sure, though. £2 super chat. Thank you, Carl. Says, most misused heel and face in the last 10 years. That's a hard question to answer because there's been a lot going on over the past decade. Most misused face. One could argue Bray Wyatt / The Fiend for both of those categories. Now that I'm thinking about it, as The Fiend, he should have been like the most badass heel. And then WWE booked that Hell in a Cell match, and then they had him lose to Bill Goldberg. Like, that really ruined Bray Wyatt as a heel. And as a face, I mean, you look at Bray Wyatt when he was getting cheered, they didn't really capitalize on it too much. Bray Wyatt would definitely be up there as far as acts that were misused. Finn Balor as a babyface, one could argue the Demon should have had a proper run with the world title. He won it at SummerSlam in 2016 and then got hurt. The Demon should have had more moments as a top babyface. I would say either Bray Wyatt / The Fiend or Finn Balor as far as most misused. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Psycho Jet Black. Says, what are the best WWE PLEs from 2016 to 2019? It's funny because I'm not a fan of the name of it, but Great Balls of Fire was a surprisingly good show. Samoa Joe versus Brock Lesnar was a hell of a match. That one definitely stands out to me as one of the better PLEs. The 2018 Royal Rumble with Shinsuke Nakamura winning and then Asuka winning the women's, Ronda Rousey making her debut. The 2019 SummerSlam I really enjoyed. WrestleMania was pretty good, other than the ending of the show, the finish specifically. But I was at the 2019 SummerSlam. That was a fun show. I was at the 2018 Money in the Bank in Chicago. I enjoyed that one too. And of course, if we're counting them, pretty much every black and gold NXT takeover was a show worth checking out during that period. Thank you for the question, Psycho Jet Black. I appreciate it. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Building Nexus. Says, should they make Kross the new Devil's Advocate? I think Karrion Kross probably needs to go babyface. I just feel like the heel gimmick is worn out. He actually has an entertaining side to him. When you see him in interviews, he comes off as a likable guy. I enjoy his impression of Jesse the Body Ventura. I feel like Kross might actually have some mileage as a babyface. The whole heel thing, I'm Mr. Scary Guy, it's not working. They've tried several things with him. I would have him the opposite of the devil at this point. I would make him a baby face. You know, he'll probably feud with the Wyatt Six as a heel at some point, but I think he's another guy that could really benefit. He's been misused for sure. Part of it's being misused, and part of it is just the gimmicks are not catching on for whatever reason. Shout out to Mr. Tito, longtime No DQ columnist, longtime columnist period, going back to the 90s. Mr. Tito says, how badly do you want Naomi to join the Bloodline? I'm honestly over it at this point. I don't think it's going to happen. But it would be cool if the new Bloodline had somebody like Nia Jax join them. She doesn't really need to be in the group. She's doing fine. She's the women's world champion. But I think it would be kind of cool if she joined the Bloodline with Solo Sikoa, and then Naomi joined up with her husband with the OG Bloodline, even though she wasn't part of the OG Bloodline. But that's all the more reason I don't think it's happening. I've given up on that idea. Naomi's lost in the shuffle. She's really doing nothing right now. They should have just brought her back in the Bloodline to begin with, but they didn't do it. She's doing her own thing. Naomi, blah, 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 all that crap. She came back for that. All right, we got an email question here from David Diaz, former Wrestling Trivia Challenge champion. Says, my question to you, have you ever tried to get accredited for WWE events and tried to conduct interviews with their talent? No, I have not, for a couple of reasons. Number one, they don't like me very much. Look it up. They threatened to sue me at one point. Number two, I don't like the drama of dealing with wrestlers and dealing with companies. I dealt with PWG back in the day, and that was stressful. I get anxiety easily. And after the drama I dealt with in PWG, trying to go through them, interviewing wrestlers and all that, it made me not like wrestling, to be completely honest with you. When I see the backstage egos and all the drama at a small scale level, this is an independent wrestling promotion. Imagine that tenfold in a company like AEW or WWE. Not my thing. I'm not that type of personality. Some people, they're the types of people that will go and they're go-getters. And I'm not that kind of go-getter. I don't want to deal with the drama. As far as I'm concerned, life's too short to be dealing with all that. I don't crave it. I don't have the interest in doing it. So I've never made an attempt to do it. I mean, maybe one day I'll consider it, but I'm probably on their blacklist if I had to make a guess. But thank you for that, David. I appreciate it. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. Says, should Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill turn as a two-women power trip? Bianca Belair is a heel. I mean, we've talked about it before, but I don't know if it's ever going to happen. Jade Cargill, on the other hand, we've seen her work in AEW. I think she's a natural heel. Maybe Bianca could make it work. I would not be opposed to it. I hate to say it, but I feel like both of them are kind of getting lost in the shuffle right now. They should be the women's champions, and if not, they should be dominating the roster. And it just feels like they could be doing more. Like they should be in a higher position than they are. They should be on the PLEs. They should be one of the focal points of SmackDown. Yeah, for any of you wondering about WWF WCW, go Google it. WWF WCW Aaron Riff legal case. You'll probably find it on Google if you look it up. That was when I lost the domain name, WWFWCW.com, back in 2000. I was still in high school, and they were coming after me for copyright infringement. Oh, man, those were interesting times for sure. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. Says, if Xavier Woods turns heel, maybe he kicks Karrion Kross out of the Final Testament. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Xavier Woods is going heel. But I'll tell you what, I would legitimately be entertained by it. I don't think it's the worst idea, although it does somewhat feel like a copy of the Judgment Day storyline. But, man, Xavier Woods is a heel, finally ending New Day. Sign me up for it. Like, I know some people would feel bad if New Day broke up. They're the only group that hasn't broken up, but heel Xavier, I think there's money in that. I would be very intrigued to see what they could do with a heel Xavier Woods. Oh, Psycho Jet Black already found it. And I've told this story before. We tried to fight it. I was in high school. My mom was able to find a lawyer. We tried to fight it. I lost the domain name. It became themayhem.com. I had to get a new domain name. And a couple years later, WWF lost to the World Wildlife Fund and became WWE. WWFWCW.com went into limbo. And guess who owns it now? Go to WWFWCW.com now. Very, very interesting how that all worked out. Anyways, let's move on here. And they don't care. Like, WWE owns WCW, and they're not coming after me. I guess I'll explain what happened. So, in 1999, I was a Shop Zone affiliate. So I was actually being sent free merchandise from WWF for bringing people to their website. And then about a year later, I get a notice that they want the name. I'm infringing on their copyright of WWF, and they ordered me to hand over the domain name. So I was obviously very upset, and they were trying to cite that my domain name was causing confusion in the marketplace and taking away from their business. And my argument was, well, you guys are sending me free merchandise because I'm bringing people to your Shop Zone website. So how is my domain name harming you guys in any way? But copyright is copyright, lost the domain name. So that's the short story there on what happened. This was back in like 2000. Anyways, let's get back on track here with the Q&A. Let's see what the next question is here. Oh, wait. Psycho Jet Black sent in one regarding Batista. Psycho Jet Black says, what are the worst Batista matches and moments? If Batista and Matt Striker merged together to become one character, they would become Batista. Worst Batista matches and moments. I mean, off the top of my head, the match with Big Show at the ECW television episode on Sci-Fi at the Hammerstein Ballroom. The crowd was completely shitting on that match. It was bad. Batista didn't want to be there. Big Show was at least trying to play up the heel character, but you could tell neither guy wanted to be there. It was a complete disaster. And then I want to say the Great Khali Punjabi prison match, but when Batista did that jump from one cage to the other, I was actually impressed with that spot. So I can't say that particular match, but I'm sure he's had some other bad matches with the Great Khali. His matches with King Booker weren't too good either. Yeah, there were some bad ones, probably around 2006 when he came back from the injury. He wasn't quite as good as he was before. Also, he didn't have Triple H to work with. But by the time WrestleMania rolled around, Batista and JBL, not too good. But once Batista got in there with Undertaker, I think his quality of in-ring work picked back up. Batista moments. probably 2019 when he told Triple H, "Give me what I want," and he just kept saying it over and over again. And then when he told the great Khali that basketballs don't hold grudges. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I appreciate it. JJ Williams sent in this email question. Thank you for that, JJ. Says, with you on the verge of giving up completely on AEW Dynamite reviews, have you given any thought to giving the weekly TNA or NXT product a fair shot? Maybe 1 month comparing the 3 shows and keep whichever one you get into the most. As far as NXT goes, I think I will review the first 2 shows on the CW. The first episode is going to be in Chicago at the Allstate Arena. That's huge. And then week 2, they're going to be in St. Louis at that arena, and Randy Orton is going to be part of the show. I think I will review those 2 episodes of NXT. I don't know if I'm going to go back to a weekly thing with NXT. TNA, Bound for Glory is looking like it's going to be in Detroit, Michigan. And if that's the case, I would consider going to that. And if I do, I would talk about the experience. And hey, maybe going to a TNA show in person might reignite that passion that I once had for TNA. But it's been a long time. I've been so mentally checked out of TNA for so long. I don't know if there's anything that could get me back into it. And with AEW, I'm still going to recap the shows. It's been up and down, as I said earlier. It's been uneven, the quality of the weekly shows, but I will keep recapping them, and hopefully more people will spread the word, and I can get people watching it, because I feel like a lot of people are just losing interest in AEW and not even checking out the recaps anymore. That's how lack of interested they've become. Shout out to Building Nexus, who sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Should The Rock help Team Solo win at Survivor Series? That's an interesting question. I would like to see a happy ending for the OG Bloodline, but if you want to maximize the drama for WrestleMania, that's how you could do it. The Rock interferes at Survivor Series and helps Solo team wins. I feel like it's more likely that The Rock will show up around the Royal Rumble. Maybe The Rock costs Roman Reigns the Rumble. Something like that, and then he'll say, I orchestrated the whole thing. Maybe The Rock felt confident enough that Solo's Bloodline could get the job done at Survivor Series and didn't show up. I just don't have a strong belief that The Rock is going to be back before the Royal Rumble. But that is a possibility. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. I appreciate it. Psycho says, will Bloodline replace Solo Sikoa with Hikuleo? I don't think so. I think Solo Sikoa will be a focal point of the new Bloodline for the time being. He might bring in Hikuleo as another member, but Solo has been pushed, other than the beginning of the year when he, for whatever reason, lost a lot of times after beating John Cena. For the most part, he's been booked very strongly, and he's Roman Reigns' foe right now. I definitely see more than one match between Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. With Solo and Roman Reigns, it's very personal, and I expect that to be going on for the foreseeable future. But thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I do appreciate that super chat. And we got one more question here from Steve-O. Steve-O sent this in, says, with MVP confirming his departure, Shelton Benjamin being gone, and Bobby Lashley heavily rumored to be departing the WWE, do you think a Hurt Business reunion in AEW should happen or no? Do you think if it does happen, should a new member join the faction or just keep it as a trio group? I believe we may have touched on this during the No DQ review. I would do it. I know some people say, oh, it's copying another WWE angle, but it would at least draw in a little bit of interest to AEW. I don't think it's going to move any kind of serious numbers. I don't think Bobby Lashley should go to TNA. I know some have argued that, but he's not going to elevate them. TNA is where TNA's at. AEW, at the very least, is national television. I think if Lashley is going to make a move, it should be AEW. You might as well go big or go home. And that includes AEW. They should do a full-blown group with MVP, Shelton Benjamin, and yes, bring in a new member, somebody like Powerhouse Hobbs. That would be a great opportunity for Hobbs to be part of this new group with Bobby Lashley, MVP, and Shelton Benjamin. If anything, that could be what takes Hobbs' career to the next level. So for any other reason, I would go with that. If you're just looking for one good reason, push Powerhouse Hobbs, let him get the rub off of the veterans, MVP, Lashley, and Shelton Benjamin. Anyways, on that note, we're right at about an hour here. I do have some more questions. I really want to thank everyone because I did get sent in a lot of questions this week. And because of that, I'm going to give you guys more. Next Thursday night, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, I'm going to do this again. Another No DQ&A video. I got more questions. Keep sending me questions. If you guys want a weekly No DQ&A video, email me questions. nodqmisc@gmail.com. I still have some here in the can. I will get to them next Thursday night. Now, Psycho Jet Black super chatted, so I will answer this before I sign off. Hurt Business as the outsiders for AEW. Hey, that's an interesting idea. Maybe they come in and say they're not affiliated with AEW. What if they did some kind of an outsiders angle with Shane McMahon? What if Shane McMahon was aligned with the Hurt Business and he was their manager and they're coming to destroy AEW? Yeah, it would be considered a knockoff of the NWO, but I'd be intrigued. A McMahon trying to take down AEW, like Shane coming in and being with Tony Khan and all that. You know, it's kind of like Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff being aligned when Bischoff got signed. Like, it was a oh my God moment, but I think they left a lot of money on the table when they didn't have Bischoff and McMahon be head-to-head in a storyline. Shane McMahon threatening the very existence of AEW and the Hurt Business being the muscle. I would tune in. So if they're looking to get those numbers up, I would watch, rip off or not, a McMahon trying to destroy AEW. That's something that if you're not following AEW or you're not watching wrestling lately, you're going to be like, a McMahon trying to destroy AEW. I might have to see what this is all about. I don't think it's a bad idea. Will they do it? I'm not holding my breath. I feel like Tony Khan is going to stick to doing the 5-star wrestling matches every week. That's what he wants to do, getting the This Is Awesome chants. That's the kind of fan Tony Khan is, and that's what he wants to do for his audience. So I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. But if it does happen, I'm going to be interested. Anyways, guys, thank you all for watching. Have a great night. Have a great rest of your week. And like I said, I will be back in 1 week for No DQ&A video. So tune in Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Say yes to nodq.com. Buy a shirt, nodq.com/merch. And I will see you all next time. Take care, everyone.